Hey, welcome to Integrative Preparedness. I'm Steve Smith. Are you familiar with Randy Weaver and Ruby Ridge? I'm sure a lot of you are. Many of you may not be. It happened back in I think, 92, if I'm not mistaken. And some of you are probably familiar with the story, but don't know a lot of the details. That's what I want to talk about today. The lessons of Randy Weaver and Ruby Ridge. Welcome to all the new people. First off, it's great to have you all here, whether you're on YouTube only or over in kind of the special section on Patreon. It's good to have you. I say that I have the smartest commenters in YouTube land, and every time I make a video, they prove me right once again. This is a place to where you can come and learn some things, not just from me, but by the comments down below. We have some really sharp people, and especially over on Patreon. What's Patreon? Patreon is where I put everything that I put on YouTube plus other stuff, and you'll find out a little bit about that in a minute. If you're new, we welcome you. We hope you enjoy it, and we encourage you to comment. We just have certain parameters, and that's be nice. Don't be snarky. Don't be snotty. Don't be accusatory. Come in and just act like you would if you were in my home, to me and my other guests, and it'll be a great time. Things are getting interesting in our country, and they have all of the markings of getting more interesting. Every time we come into a new political season, which we're entering into now, because 22 is the off-year elections, all of the House of Representatives, a third of the Senate, and many local offices will be up for grabs. We expect for there to be a red wave. The sentiments of the people are starting to shift because of many different reasons. Economics, things they're finding out about the government, things the government's doing, things that, are being required of people, and the pushback of people who don't want to have things required of them. A lot of things are coming together. War, possible war. I'm going to talk about that, probably over on, American reversion. It seems that, our current administration is bound and determined to, get us into another war. They do that. The Democrats do that. And if there's anybody on here who's a Democrat and was just offended, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to personally offend you. I used to be a Democrat before I started paying attention. But if you trace all the wars back, the Democrats are the ones that get us into the wars. With the exception, you can say, well, Bush and Bush the little. Okay, well, I don't consider them. They may have run as Republicans, but they weren't conservatives by any means. The last Republican that ever really started a war was Lincoln, who I also don't like. Getting back to this, we're getting back into the season of politics, and I fully expect there to be some, I won't even use the lighthearted word shenanigans. There's going to be some very serious, should I say false flags? Should I say whatever I could, I'll probably make another one on that, that are going to bring things to a head because the Democrats feel like they have a big chance of losing, and they're right. I think they're going to lose big. And whenever that they see that coming down the road, they will do something to cause chaos and turmoil, and so things are going to get dicey. We have a growing feeling in our country that they cannot trust the government. I left government service back in the 80s for that reason. We have a feeling on the part of many in the government that the people who oppose them are not just political adversaries, but political enemies and social enemies. We're seeing the abuse of power by our government and by many of the police agencies. And so this brings us to a point where we can look to what happened at Ruby Ridge, and also a broader extent with Randy Weaver to take some lessons from those things. I say not just Ruby Ridge, but Randy Weaver because of things that led up to the siege at Ruby Ridge. If you're not familiar with this, this is something you should be familiar with. And I have put over on Patreon a PBS special, which is pretty good. It's not bad at all, even though it's PBS. There's a couple of things wrong with it, which I'll talk about in just a second, that explains the siege at Ruby Ridge, what led up to it. And there are a lot of lessons in there. For those of you who are on Patreon, and for those of you who will go to Patreon to become a part of that discussion over there, I'm going to put a caveat here. First off, if I went through that video with you, I couldn't go a minute without pointing out a lesson, and I'm sure many of you would feel the same way because we have a lot of people here with a lot of experience, law enforcement, military, different kinds of things. There are just a lot of lessons in there. And so when that's posted over on Patreon, go watch it. The lessons here are very important now. Some time ago, we had a lot of people on this channel making statements that I had to cool them down, to be honest. They were making all sorts of unfortunate comments about we got to go to war, we got to do this, and really some comments that could have gotten them in trouble and could have gotten this channel in trouble, and I don't stand for that. One of the things that you can have your opinion, you can make your points if you're intelligent without using language that will bring things down on you or this channel or anybody else, and that's what I ask, that's what I expect. But you can see the lessons there, and you'll see how this applies. And I had to pull some people off. So I do not make any comments encouraging violence of any kind against anyone. Period. I'm not, okay, I lived a life of violence most of my life. I'm not squeamish about it. I'm saying be smart. Do not make any comments like that. Do not make any comments about the inappropriate change of government in our country. Okay? I just say that. Okay? The Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the Constitution, which are very different things. We both know that. Okay? Our remedies are included in each. Different remedies. Okay? I'm going to leave it at that, and we don't need any more expanding on that because everybody out there is smart. So I'm going to encourage, now the true story of Randy Weaver begins far before Ruby Ridge, and some of that is included in the PBS special that I've put up over there on Patreon. There are a couple of things that are wrong with it. First off, well, I guess I'll start with first the gun charge. They don't cover it. They make it sound like he was selling illegal guns. You have to go further into it with that. It was a federal informant that had been sent at him that asked him to cut down shotguns. He should have been smarter. Okay, let me put it that way. He should have been smarter. He was no dummy. He was former special forces. Come on, use your noggin on this. The snitch, because they wanted him as an informant or a way into Aryan nations, because Randy was a separatist. He lived up there in Idaho, and they wanted to use him. He said no. Okay. Well, anyway, they ran this snitch in on him, and that asked him to cut down a shotgun. He at first cut the shotgun to a legal length, and then the snitch took it back to law enforcement, and they said, well, no, this isn't short enough to make it illegal. Take it back to him and have him cut it shorter. Okay. Now that's the next thing. Weaver should have been smart enough to understand. What, this guy's coming back and wants me to cut it down 3/4 more of an inch? That makes it illegal? Why? He should have seen that that guy was a snitch then. Okay. Unfortunately, apparently he did it, and he cut it again. He should have told the guy, cut your own damn gun. Okay. So that was the first thing that this does not cover. This PBS special makes it look like he was selling illegal guns. He wasn't. He did something stupid. Well, he did, but he did something. He didn't sell it, but he did something stupid. Okay. And so, you know, my dad used to tell me, and I thought it was funny, about something entirely different. He says, the people who are in jail aren't there for the crimes they committed. They're there for being stupid. And I used to not understand it, but I do now. The second thing, that they make it sound like he did not show up for his court appearance, which resulted in a warrant being issued for him, and therefore after that's what brought the marshals in. Well, that doesn't cover it truthfully. What had happened was they had changed his court date, and somebody told him that his court date was changed. He called down, and they told him at the courthouse, yes, your court date has been changed to a later date. So he didn't go on his original court date, but it had not been changed. And so that allowed them to issue a warrant for failure to appear. So those are a couple of things that the PBS special did not get right, or did not include. You know, we know. I mean, for a PBS, this wasn't too bad, to be honest. It presented both sides. It presented the thoughts of some of the feds, who are covering their asses, to be honest, and they're coming off trying to act like good guys now. But if you remember, and I do remember because I followed it at the time, before Greitz got up there, I mean, it was we thought everything was going to war, and there were a lot of statements that are not included in that. There were a lot of things done by federal law enforcement that they don't want known. I'm not going to get into it here. And don't anybody else get too deep on that stuff. We just encourage everybody to do their own investigation. Okay. So those two things, notwithstanding, this gives you an idea of kind of what was going on. The main, well, I won't even say what the main lesson was there. This thing is just too full of lessons. Watch that thing over there on Patreon and get the lessons from it. Okay. There are a couple of books that aren't half bad. One's not half bad, and the other one's pretty good because it was written by Sarah and Randy. One here, it's written by Jess Walter. Every Knee Shall Bow. Okay. It says the truth and tragedy of Ruby Ridge and the Randy Weaver family. It's pretty good, The one that I would definitely recommend, and if you don't know what's on here, well, I'll say this in a minute. The Federal Siege at Ruby Ridge by Randy and Sarah Weaver, his daughter, in our own words. And if you see the woman in the crosshairs, that represents Vicki Weaver, Randy's wife, who was shot in the head by the FBI HRT, the HURT team. We talked about them recently, didn't we? It is a heartbreaking story for any of you who aren't familiar with it. So I would recommend, watch that. I'd recommend these books, especially this one, because it's written by Randy and Sarah, who were there. These are important lessons for us. It's important for those who know about it to reflect on, to remember, to see how they might apply with anything coming down the road. And they are especially important for people who may not be intimately familiar with this story. So I encourage you, watch it, read up on it, think about it, think about the lessons. And I think that's about it, because the lessons are not contained in anything more than I can say. It's in that presentation and in these books. Anyway, I'll leave it there. We have interesting times coming our way, and I think they're going to get more and more interesting, and that means they're going to become more and more dangerous. That means we have to become more careful with everything that we do, everything that we say, right? Everything that we comment on, all that kind of stuff. So let's do and let's be ready. You all have a good day. Remember that we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow. Preparing well today means knowing history, knowing the past. Without understanding the past, there's no way to be able to understand the potentials of the future. So you all have a good day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.